Well, someone told me that after 50, you take away a year for each year.
That's a good idea.
And thanks to Bruce asking me to be a feature, I decided to have it on my birthday. So I am now, today, I am 25. I have a dear friend in the audience who said, I hope you make it to 0.
All right.
I wanted to honor my mother for giving birth to me.
Yeah.
And it's been a great trip preparing for this. It's already been a success. I hope I can share that success with you. It could be called, It's Never Too Late to Have a Happy Childhood. It also might have a Surgeon General's warning at the beginning of the story, but it does aim to have a healing and happy ending. With your help, maybe we'll get there. My first memory of my mother. I'm 3 years old, and I'm walking into the kitchen in the morning, and I hear, pow! Pow! And my mother's holding a broom, and she's hitting the ceiling with a broom. Pow! And I say, Ma, why are you hitting the ceiling with a broom? And she says, the people upstairs made a lot of noise at a party last night, and they kept me up. So I'm getting them up in the morning. Pow! Pow! When I used to tell this story when I was teaching creative writing, having people write their first memories, I thought I would get some sympathy, which I did earlier in my teaching writing career, but lately, in the last many years, good that people say, right on, what a great mother, pow! What a liberated woman, pow! My mother met my father ice skating. The old falling on the ice trick. She falls down. Maybe she sees this handsome fireman who helps her up. Thank you, kind sir. And he asks her out. What would you like to do? And she says, bike riding. And my father said he spent the next week learning how to ride a bike. And that's how they got together. They start going out, and they visit my mother's cousin Esther. And Esther says, Charles, do you love Evelyn? And Charles says, yes. Evelyn, do you love Charles? Sure. Cousin Esther said, great, you're getting married. And they walk out. My mother tells me these stories. And my mother's in shock. And she says, I don't know if we should do that. We're just getting to know one another. And according to my mother, my father says, honey, if you don't marry me now, we're not going to get married. And my mother marries him. And my mother tells me these things. She says, when we went to our honeymoon at Niagara Falls, this she tells me, and Oscar Wilde, when visiting Niagara Falls, said, the only thing more disappointing than Niagara Falls is the honeymoons that people have spent there. And my mother said, that's true. When she's pregnant with me, my father told me, you weren't planned, but we were eventually planning to have you. When she's pregnant with me, my mother tells me later that it was the happiest time in her life. So I hope I can get back there and feel that happiness of telling you this story. But when I was born, and I was apparently a colicky baby, and they according to the pediatricians at the time, you were supposed to only feed the child every 4 hours. At the end of the 4th hour, and I'm crying, and I want food, nourishment, and they don't want to spoil me. My mother does not want to spoil me, and at the end of the 4th hour, they offer me food, and I guess like my mother, pow, pow, I refuse to eat, according to my father, and they hold me down. This is good preparation for my love of Jesus. This is early religious education. They hold me down. My father holds me down, and my mother pours, I guess, some formula down at the end of the 4th hour. And that's my introduction to food, which has been a challenge. Another food incident in our family, I'm older now, but still food is a challenge, I like to call the tragedy of the open mouth. We sit down to dinner, it's a black table, my father had painted it, and my father's feeling empty inside, I'm guessing, and he rubs his thighs like this, and when there's bread on the table, he takes it and starts eating it. And my mother comes in the room and she says, "Charlie, you're eating before the family is sitting down to eat. I made this meal. This is my big meal for the evening, and you didn't even wait for me." And that makes my father a little hungrier. He eats a little more, and my mother, pow, doesn't stop. And my father says, "If you open your mouth once more, I'm throwing this coffee cup at you." With coffee in it. Ooh. And you already getting a sense of my mom. My mom says, "Oh!" And he throws it. Whoa. And my younger brother has to take her and she just go back after him too. He's a fireman, he's strong. Go after him, and he takes her into the bathroom and keeps her there until she calms down. So I call it the tragedy of the open mouth, because neither of them can keep their mouth shut. My mother discovered when she was about 14, and they were moving back to the neighborhood in New Haven where she was born, and the kids in school tell her, "You're not your parents' children. My mother told me that you're not your mother's baby." And she never knew this. She goes home and she asks her parents, and they say, "We didn't want to tell you, but you were adopted when you were 1." And I think since then, my mother has a great deal of difficulty trusting anything, right? Because what's the world like? I once had an experience, maybe like her, about 12 or 13, where I am visiting my Aunt Joyce with my mother and father, and walk out into the neighborhood, and everything seems so loud, louder than I've ever heard. It's like there's another world there, just like my mother discovering there's another world beside the world she's at. And I walk back to my Aunt Joyce and Uncle Barney, and just about before I'm going to enter the room, I think everybody's going to put a mask on their face and pretend to be my Aunt Joyce or my Uncle Barney or my mother and father. That was I think, a gift from my mother's adoption. Why I became a philosopher. We had other tragedies in our house. I had a younger brother, 2 years younger than me, and I would hit him, especially when he teased me. We had our own little dance together. And my mother would often hit me. Whack! Don't hit people smaller than you. Whack! 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 And I start to cry. You say, boys don't cry. You make me feel like a lousy mother. Whack! And sometimes she would say, wait till your father comes home, and tell him I was fighting with my younger brother. She'd tell him. And my father had a more systematic way of hitting me. It was only allowed on the backside. We had these unwritten rules. It wasn't like it's written down. And so often when he came into the room, I would put my tuchus, my ass on the ground, and he'd turn it over and he'd hit me. And then he'd walk out, and being the son of my mother, I'd say, you bastard! And he'd come back and hit me again a little bit less hard. And I again would say, you bastard. And he'd come back again and hit me a little less hard. I'd say, you bastard. And he'd pretend I knew it. He pretended not to hear me. And then my beloved mother comes, who started it all, because I stopped talking to my father for 2 days. And she says, you know, you're really hurting your father's feelings. You should apologize to him. You're hurting his feelings. And I do. I go over to my father and I say, Dad, I'm sorry I'm hurting your feelings. We're fortunate to have therapists in the audience, and this was very, not only did I get a religious education, I got an impetus to go to therapy in situations like this. When I was 18, I go to the draft board and show them and they say, to register, because that's what we did then. And they say, what's your name? I say, Micheal Koran, K-O-R-N, because that's my parents' name. And they say, Tubby, you don't know your name? It's Koran. Look at your birth certificate, K-O-R-A-N. And I go back and I say, Mom, what happened? And she said, well, I didn't like our last name, Korn. Your dad, I didn't like your dad either. And so we agreed to change it to Koran, because your grandfather's name was Kerensky. Huh. And my mother says, "Oh my, you're gonna be drafted, and you're gonna go and you're gonna get killed, and I'm at fault." And I said, "No, we'll take care of it." And so I don't know what happened to Koran, but Korn stayed in school with his 2S and managed to not go to the war. Hmm. Well, with this relationship with my mother, and my mother's always one of the other energies in the family, maybe the worst one. D.H. Lawrence has a wonderful short story, The Rocking Horse Winner, and it says they married for love, but when the love turned to dust, everyone in the family heard, there must be more money. The wall said it, the rocking horse said it, there must be more money. And that was true in our family. When I took my youngest brother with my mother shopping at Macy's, he's 10 years younger than I, and I wanted him to be a man. And we bought some Levi's. It was only $7 then. And we're coming to the counter, and it was $1 too much for my mother, and she didn't want me to spend that money on my younger brother's Levi's. And I wanted him to be a young man. And so I said, no, I'm going to pay for it. and I pulled one leg of the Levi's to the cashier while my mother was pulling it. This is a true story. Pulling it away. My younger brother Scott is watching it. I'm bigger then, and I win the battle and buy the Levi's for my brother. But money was always there. If I was going out with someone, my mother would figure out how far away they lived, and if it was too much gas, she would discourage me from dating this person. So I learned it was very good to always look underneath what was going on to see what and I showed them by getting jobs as an adult education teacher and adjunct faculty. I was going to show them I was going to get paid, very, very little money and do what I wanted to do. I wouldn't care about money. So this was actually a gift to me. This is how things changed. And someone who was not the loving mothers we've heard from earlier today in these stories. This is how my mother became what my neighbor said, the most devoted mother she ever saw in her life. I decided very awkwardly, I call up my mother and say, I don't want to talk to you for 4 years. This is a college community, freshman, sophomore, junior. So I said, then I can graduate, but I do not want to talk to you for 4 years. And after the 4 years, we'll talk again. And this was extremely freeing. I actually met my wife-to-be during these 4 years because my mother wasn't involved in what was going on. Toward the end of the 4 years, my father, at the very end, about 3 months over, my father calls me up and says, your mom has just had a heart attack. Please call her. He hadn't intervened before then. And so I called and we started talking and I invited her to come to Cambridge when she was feeling better. And she comes to Cambridge and she's still my mom. We're in Stop and Shop because I picked her up at the airport and we're getting food for her home. She's going to live at Mopsy Strange Kennedy's home for the summer. They were going out to some vacation. And she said, why are we shopping? We just come off the plane. How come there's not food in the house for me? Why are we in the Stop and Shop now? And we get to Mopsy Strange Kennedy's home, and I say to her, Mom, this is Cambridge. I think we should talk more kindly to one another. And my mom, you have sensed it now, says like, don't try to control how I talk. You're Hitler! That's what you are! You're Hitler! Don't try to control how I talk! And I walk out. And come back the following morning. And I know my mother doesn't mind if we fight. She likes it. When we used to go to the beach and we would have a good time, a rare good time, I would feel dread when we got into the car knowing my mother couldn't handle good times. She wanted us to all be as miserable as her. This is my interpretation. She said, there's sand you brought sand into the car, you're messing up our... So my mother didn't mind if we yelled at each other and she called me Hitler and I walked out and we had enough. But this time, she's afraid I won't talk to her again for 4 years. Perfect. And so she does say to me, in Mopsy Strange Kennedy's home, first time she's ever spoken to me this way. You're right, Michael. I think we should talk to each other more kindly.
Wow.
And I could see her from even then, I almost putting her tongue between her lips. She does not want me to leave her again. And she changes. And she's never, ever talked to me that way again for the next over 20 years.
Wow.
While she was alive. And she was so, so grateful to learn. It was my father's job, I think, not mine. But so grateful to learn, oh my, someone is helping me be a kinder person. And she became, as my neighbor, Muriel Heiberger, a sister of mine now, became the most devoted mother Muriel has ever seen. And she started, my mother of all people, wanting to give me money, which I needed. I was in this, I was staying away from money, teaching adult education, teaching courses. They actually came, defeating self-defeating behavior, and people actually signed up for that. And my mother says, listen, you're living in 2 rooms, and there's no sink in the bathroom. These were once servants' quarters. Why don't, here's $5,000. You can remodel your apartment. And that was more money than I ever had. But I didn't want to remodel my apartment. She calls me up a few weeks later from Sarasota, where she's staying, and she says, have you remodeled your apartment? I said, I don't really want to. I didn't want her to control my life either. And then she says, my mother says, calls me up about a day or 2 later and says, I don't want to control you. You can use the money for whatever you like. So these are great gifts. Next year she comes and she says, there's still no sink in your bathroom though. I want you to have a sink in your bathroom. And this time, we have to go shopping together before I leave. I'm not going to leave you another $5,000, but I'm happy to spend it with you. And we have a certain ecstasy shopping for bathroom sinks and getting a carpenter to get rid of a closet so I can have a bigger room and learn dancing in my kitchen living room. I made 2 mistakes. It's a cautionary tale for all of us. I wanted to be, I introduced my mother to the women, to my woman who would be my wife, and we're sitting on my porch, my rooftop, sitting down with my neighbor, and my mother starts talking about me in the 3rd person, as mothers often do. Well, neighbor, do you think Michael should marry Robbie? And my neighbor says, yeah, they loved each other. It sounded like my mother's marriage many years ago. And I, not very self-aware, feeling about a day later, I'm with Robbie in the rooftop, and I get on my knee. I just feel this come to me and say, will you marry me? She's very happy to. That actually ruined our relationship. We had one of these, guys, you could see a child of my mother. We loved to argue and make love and argue and make love and break up and come back together and to get married. We couldn't fight. When you break up when you're married, it's not so easy to get back together. So that was actually the end of us. And it took me a long time to realize, oh my, Robbie's father is a multimillionaire. And knowing my mother wanted me to marry Robbie because she comes from a wealthy family. So there was one other mistake I made, but the first mistake I made is when I invited my mother back into my life, is I should not have had her meet the woman I was dating or talk to her about it. So this is a cautionary tale for all of us. The second mistake I make I call it a forgiveness bypass. I wanted to be, I was educated, at first feeding, to be like Jesus. I was attracted to this Jewish boy who could be in a situation like this and even die and then be revived. It was very attractive. Or attracted to Isaac, who also on the altar with his father having a knife like me being fed, and then Isaac could also free himself from the altar. So I became religious. I needed to be forgiving, but it was a forgiveness bypass. I didn't realize that I had many, many, many other feelings inside for my mother. And I still kept that in. And she eventually gets Parkinson's disease and slowly is beginning to fail. And I visit her. I talk to her every day now on the phone. Visit her in Sarasota. And the last visit, she doesn't recognize me till the end of the visit. And then as I'm preparing to go, I'm kneeling by her bedside. I wanted some communion with her, before, just at least if she didn't know who I was, have some communion. And she wakes up at 5 a.m, and with the biggest smile on her face, she says, "You almost missed Michael.
Mm-hmm.
You almost missed Michael." And although it was garbled grammar, I think she was saying, "I almost missed Michael." It was so much of a moment I felt, of really getting love from her, love that I didn't have when I was growing up, which is, I call this, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And I feel very, very touched by that. And when she dies, feeling that we did connect, but I still had this forgiveness bypass, and planning for this tonight. Thank you so much for coming. This has been a healing trip for me. And I'm speaking to my therapist, and as we do in internal family systems, it's called, we have many systems inside us, much family inside us, and my wonderful therapist, Deborah Block, says, well, you can invite your mother into this room, which I hope she's even here now. What do you feel? And I thought I would be feeling, oh, you almost, and because I'm such a good therapist, I discover I want to hit my mother. I want to, pow! The way it started, pow! Really get into it. Get those feelings out. And when I think about it and imagine my mother here, with us here, not only do I want to hit her, because she's a spirit, so it's safe. Pow! Pow! And I discover I want to strangle her. And I can hear my mother, who loved self-help groups. She loved them. We would sit on the roof, and on the rooftop after she taught me yoga, for my back, which has helped me. My back has been good ever since. And at the end of the yoga session, we would say, she would lead us, each day in every way. We're growing better and better and better and better and better. She loved these things. We went to all kinds of self-help groups together. I am not making this up. Forgive me, therapists who are here. We went to Incest Anonymous together. We really did. We go there to incest. We're happy. We're healing. We go to Incest Anonymous together, and for some reason, they asked me to be the feature speaker, like I'm blessed, like Bruce blessed me tonight. And I say, well, I'm 15 years old, and I'm in the bathroom, and for my mother, there's no door. Doors do not exist, as you can imagine. The ceilings didn't either. She comes into the bathroom and she tells me, and I'm telling this to the group, I wish your father would amaze me the way you do. And this time I'm frozen enough as a human being that I don't even know how. I tell this to my friend, and she says that if you had only that would be enough for abuse as a child. And I share this with people, and then we walk out, and my mother says, "Oh, did that really happen?" And I say, "Yes, it did." And that was it. We didn't talk about it again. But we liked these self-help groups, so I can imagine with my mother here now, even with me wanting to go, pow, pow, and strangle her as a spirit, she would say, "Good, you're healing, Michael. You're healing." Or "We're healing together." And she would be jumping. She'd like to teach me how to dance. "We're healing together. We're healing together. We're healing together." And I would say to her, "No, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free." And she would say, "We're healing together. We're healing together." I say, "I'm free, I'm free, I'm free." And that's the way I would like to remember my mother. Thank you.